So to get to these characteristics of an oligopoly market, let me first mention about a monopolistic competition market. So remember, in a monopolistic competition market, there are many, many sellers, and each of these sellers are going to sell you something. And each of these things that the sellers are going to sell you are very different. There's lots of choices with lots of differentiation. However, in an oligopoly market, there is only a small number of firms. So get rid of all those. We only have a small number of firms here. And part of the reason for that, a big reason for that, is because of large barriers to entry. Oh, I could really use some economic profit to this monopolistic competition. Yeah. Low barriers to entry. Ooh, economic profit. Economic profit. I really gotta get it. No, I can't get into this oligopoly market. The barriers to entry are too high. Since there's only a small number of sellers in this market, a key feature of this market is interdependence. It's where a decision on how to act, it depends on what the other people do. So if one company does something, it's definitely going to affect the other companies. So with this interdependence, it's not just about competition. You have two possible outcomes here: cooperation and competition. Hey, come on. It's just you and me. Why fight? We can work together. We can raise our prices and make even more profit together. Deal? All right. So when these guys cooperate together, that is called collusion. Somewhere here, collusion. Here. When they do this, let's say this customer wants to come over and they want to buy this thing, and they each sell them for $5 each, let's say. And so you have all these many customers over here to buy these things. Well, what they can do is, since there's no other competition, they will work together and they will form a cartel. They will form this here cartel. And what they often do is they take their output and they can restrict their output and make it much smaller. And so now, when they can sell these things, since there's no competition and they're working together, the price is now higher and output is less. No, hey, come here. Hey, I got something. Screw that guy, okay? Come here. Now, this is pretty great for the cartel. They make lots of money, they're doing well, they're raising their prices, pretty wonderful. But the problem is, why did they form this cartel in the first place? They have the incentive to make more money. Well, let's say there's more customers that want to buy their things. They're agreeing to restrict their output here, which raises the price. But there's always the incentive. There's always the incentive for one of them to come out here and say, you know what? I'll sell you a little piece of what I have here. I'll kind of secretly sell it to you over here for $5. Sure, why not? Because I'm selling this, or this guy's selling that for $8. Sure, he's getting the benefit of the cartel, and he's secretly on the sly also able to sell that. So that's great for this guy if he can cheat this system. But you know, there's a lot more customers out there that are willing to buy your stuff, and every single one of these guys, they're also having the same incentive. Hey, look, I'll sell you a little bit for $5 over here, and I'll jump out of this cartel and I can sell you a little bit more. Oh, you're down here for $5 over here. And here, I'll go ahead and do the same for you. And so what ends up happening is everybody starts selling everything for a much lower price. But then there's so much supply out there. You have all this supply because they're selling all these things. And so that's not the price anymore, really. Now the price has dropped to even lower. And so when they're all together in this cartel, that works pretty well for these guys. But this cartel is weak. When you do have that cartel, you can raise your price a lot and restrict your output. But there's always the incentive for one of them to cheat, and they all have the exact same incentive. And so what ends up happening is cartels are pretty weak and they're hard to keep together sometimes, and it lowers the price. Good for customers, bad for sellers. Okay, so here's another consequence of interdependence. This idea of the kinked demand curve. Or here, there, I think. So the kinked demand curve. So here's the basic idea. I have these four guys. There's four guys selling four things in this oligopoly. They're all basically the same. I'm going to kind of focus on this guy for a little bit. So the market price for all these guys, let's say that's the market price, 8. So at that market price, this guy here, he has a demand. Let's draw his quantity and his price. So there's his demand at this. He's selling X number. I'm going to put it, let's say, I'm just going to say right there. Just bear with me. So let's say this guy here, he decided, he wanted to raise his price. Let's say he wanted to raise his price to 10. Now these guys, they're not working together. They are competing like a normal market right now. So if he raises his price to 10, you're a customer. You come in. What did I do with those little girls? Well, close enough. So here's a little girl. She wants to come in and buy one of these things. That price is 10. These guys' price is 8. What do you think is going to happen to this guy's sales? Yeah, you're right. He's not going to sell a whole lot. So the customers are going to move to over here. He ends up losing this situation. So for him, his demand starts to become more elastic. So let's say this is the market price here at $8. And anything above that, his demand is going to be pretty elastic, which means a small change in his price is going to lead to a large change in his quantities. So you raise your price by 10, he might lose almost all of his customers, like that one, because they all go over here. Now, what if instead this guy wanted to lower his price? Let me just finish this, actually. Is there any reason these guys should ever raise their price? No. Okay, silly, dumb. Okay. So let's say he wants to lower his price instead. Well, if he lowers his price, you're this customer. You're looking at these things. They're all basically the same thing, right? Which one do you want? Well, you want the cheaper one. So for you, all of these customers, every single one of these customers, all of them are all buying these things. They're all basically the same. They look at yours and say, hey, yours is cheaper. Let's all go buy this guy's stuff. So what's going to happen to these guys here? Well, they're going to have the incentive too. They're going to have to lower their price. They're going to want to lower their price as well. So they all lower their price to $5. Which means for you, you might pick up some market share in the beginning, but they all have the incentive to lower their price, so you might not actually get more market share. You might not actually get more customers because they're lowering their price too. So that means you have this change in price here, but you only have a smaller change in your demand. So a large change in your price along here, a bigger change, leads to only a smaller change in your quantities because these guys are also lowering their prices all along the same line. So at some point, there is some number. Hey, look, I drew it, it went away. Look, I drew it, it went away. That's not how this is supposed to work. Anyway, you have that magic market price, and if you want to increase it, your quantities are going to become more elastic. You're going to lose market share even if you raise your price a little bit, because they'll go buy those other things that are cheaper. But if you're the guy that's going to be lowering your price, well, they're all going to follow suit and lower their price too, because they don't want to lose their market share, which means you probably won't get that much more market share if you do at all. So a large change in your price here leads to only a small change here. And that has to do with this kinked demand curve because of interdependence. So, putting that all together then, in this market, I have a price of 8. They're selling this. Do any of them want to raise their price? No, that's kind of stupid, right? Do any of them want to lower their price? No, not really. You don't want to because you're just going to simply make less money. So, what ends up happening is these prices end up pretty stable. They don't really go much higher and they don't really go much lower. You kind of get stuck at that price, which is price rigidity. Price, it's around here somewhere. Anyway, there's that. Okay, so real fast, going through all that, let's look at some of this on a past paper question that came up in 2000, May 2015. Well, it happened in my lifetime, let's put it that way. So one of the questions about kinked demand curve, this is what it looks like on the paper. So I'm going to scroll down here, and it says answer 2 questions, each worth 25 points. So this first question, average total cost, marginal costs. Here's a thing about perfect competition. As price takers, fine, calculate stuff, as you can see. Calculate short run profits, short run. Notice it uses the word abnormal profit, abnormal loss, crazy, stupid, abnormal things. But you notice the words that they use there. Reference the diagram, show the long run. So all the stuff you see on the graph, you know, just kind of go step by step. And then there's the explanation. Notice it's worth a little bit more points. Explain how it goes from short run to long run. And then there's satisficing, which I come back to later. Okay, so not that question, but this question about this kinked demand curve. So it shows here, following the demand, you know, here you have your demand curve, blah, 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 blah. The current price here is 10. The output, you know, if you follow that along, if you can, somewhere around 22-ish, fine. Okay, so there you go. And then the first question is define non-collusive. In this little video, there was just like you know, there's collusion, there's non-collusion. So non-collusive is, well, you know, not working together. So looking at the IB, what's it called? The IB answers. I cut and paste what they wrote, and I'm gonna just slide it in over here on this whiteboard. So here is what IB gives you for a 2-point question here, a vague definition. You work independently. It's kind of what I said in the video, and that's pretty vague. But you got to be a little more accurate. You want to get that second point. It says, you know, you're acting independently, but you do not come together to set agreements on price and output. You know, just a little bit more to get that second point. Okay, so going down to the next question. Look at that. Calculate price elasticity demand if price goes up to 12 and price goes down to 4. So simple equations, we've done this before. You should know, pay attention that the original price here was, do I have a little thingy? I know I do. Come on, annotate, stamp. Ooh, stamp, let's try stamp. I haven't tried that yet. Stamp, arrow. But bam, hey, look at that. Yeah, see, price is 10. So now can I still scroll? Ah, it's still there. That kind of sucks. Okay, fine. So notice price was 12. Let me get rid of that annotation. That's kind of annoying. Go away. Said clear all drawings. Now give me a new one. Nah, I'm screw it. I'm gonna screw it up. Okay. So at a price of 12, you're gonna go from a price of 10 to a price of 12. When that happens, you notice your quantity is gonna go from, I don't know if you can see the hand on the video or not, you know, from 22 to, oh my God, something like 10-ish around there. So here's the answers from IB, because I'm too lazy to do these equations. Zoom over here, you know the PED there. Any valid work, you get a point for it, and you get a point for getting the equation. Notice it's going to be elastic. The number has to be bigger than 1, or you guarantee you didn't do it right. Remember P's, Q's, which one comes first, which one the bottom, P before you Q. No, Q before you P, Q before you P. Notice here to get 2 points, you get a point for getting the answer, and you get a point for kind of, you know, showing the answer. And so for the second one, price decreases to 4. So going back to this, okay, your price was 10, quantity is 22-ish. Your price goes down to 4, so output goes to 27-ish, around there. So calculate that. You're going to get an elastic number, and here's what IB says. And you notice it's 0.28. Also, please notice it's a negative number, but you could do a negative number, or you can do absolute value. When I talked about it in class, I said absolute value is fine. That's usually the way we discuss it and talk about it. But when you do the math,
it will accept either one of those. So you should have elastic or inelastic number for sure. It doesn't have to be super accurate, but pretty darn close. So notice the PED here, it's 27.27. You do have to round it 2 decimal places. Every time you do a calculation, 2 decimal places. Every time you do a calculation, 2 decimal places. Every time you do a calculation, 2 decimal places. It doesn't matter what the equation is or the question is. If it's possible to do 2 decimal places, calculate it to 2 decimal places every single time. Also, it shows here that candidates could have used the midpoint formula. We have not used the midpoint formula in class. It's kind of not needed. The midpoint formula is just it's just a little bit more complicated. I can talk about it at another time if you want. Most of the time, it's not really necessary or even that useful, really. Okay, so then going down to question number G, use a diagram to answer what you said in part F to explain why rigidities exist in non-collusive oligopoly markets. So notice this first question, 2 points off this. Next question, 2 points, do some calculations. 2 points, do a calculation. There's 6 points out of 35 already. And then here's another 4-point question. So it's just kind of building and building and building. Notice you're using other, elasticity and stuff, connecting this kind of stuff together. And then at the end, explain yourself, right? So explain why rigidities exist. I kind of vaguely said it in that video. Let's see what IB said. This is kind of too small to look at, so I can zoom it a little bit bigger. It's really annoying because I can't make it bigger the other way. So anyway, please notice the 4-point question. And the way it's kind of done is with these ranges. It is a little subjective. So 1 to 2 points, saying it's limited. You explain that they're unwilling to increase or reduce price because they're worse off in either case. And that's really what I said in the PPT video. It's 12:30 in the morning now. It was vague. So you want to get those extra answers? Look at this stuff. For an explanation that they can increase price, may expect rivals not to follow, so the demand is elastic and revenue would decrease. On the other hand, if they cut price, they may expect rivals to follow, so the demand is relatively inelastic and the firm will again be worse off. Therefore, it is not in the firm's interest to change price. Awesome, right there. I kind of said the same thing. It took what took me about a few minutes to talk about. It does it here in like 2 sentences. That literally took me 20 seconds to actually say that out loud. Probably take you a little bit longer than that to write it, but not much more. 4 points. That's a beautiful answer. What's the second one say? An explanation that for the profit maximizing oligopolies who predicts that rivals will not follow the price increase but follow the price cut, their range of cost conditions possible, blah 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 blah. Therefore, that's a lot more complicated words saying the exact same thing. But you see the difference in the points you get. The first one is like, I guess they'll be worse off, so they should stay at this equilibrium. Fine, 1 point. But if you can sit there and say, well, there's this elasticity, there's this price increase, there's revenue issues, there's all those big fancy words, 3 or 4 points right there. So I hope that helps. I think I'm out of things. Do I want to say more? What's over here? If I keep going down. Nope, I'm getting the aggregate demand. I'm gonna stop right there. Good night.